Yo guys, welcome to the video. This is Josh or Milky, and today we have another currency test. In this new patch, there was a Harbinger Scarab added, but we got the new Obelisk Scarab for Harbingers. Essentially, when you go to fight a Harbinger, it will have also spawned multiple Obelisks. So where does this stack up versus just having additional Harbingers in your map? So that's what we're trying to explore. I will preface this by saying a mere 100 map test by little old me is certainly not enough to give a definitive answer, but it puts us one step closer to at least having something akin to one. Now, what is Harbinger? Let's talk about that first. Harbinger, of course, is a mechanic that is good for two things. First of all, it drops Harbinger loot, Fracturing Shards, Mirror Shards, Exile Shards, all that good stuff. And two, it is a great conduit for monsters. It summons a lot of rare monsters, which obviously is a benefit of the mechanic and something we should try to utilize if we're going to farm it. So, I chose to combine it with Beyond, which, because just the sheer number of monsters allows us to summon a ton of Beyond monsters. Now, Harbinger itself does not scale with quantity, but there wasn't really much left to put my points into, so I chose to juice up the maps with the increased effect, just to get more ground loot, as that is the buzzword these days. But yeah, ground loot and scarabs. We wanted as many scarabs as we could get from all these additional rare monsters we're spawning, whether they be Beyond rares or Harbinger rares, and it actually yielded some pretty interesting results, which we'll go into in a second. So this is the tree that I used. It will be on the sheet, as always, as well as in the description. I went with blue altars. Either are fine. As I said, Harbinger does not scale with quantity, but all the other loot in the map does, and the other loot in the map certainly accounts for a good portion of the total loot that we got. So we went with City Square. This is just the map that I have scried, but it does have some added benefits for running Harbinger as well. The reason for doing it is Harbinger, again, doesn't scale with anything. The best thing you can do for Harbinger is have them spawn close together so that you can cull more of them at the same time. That's going to be a big speed differential. If you can take a small map and group all the Harbingers together, assuming your build can handle it, you're going to go much faster than if you can't do that. So these big these big closed layouts where they're going to spawn behind walls and whatnot, not the best for this. An open layout, which gives you the ability to spawn Harbingers on top of each other, is going to be the biggest benefit to your clear speed. So that's why I went with City Square. Nothing else matters other than what I just mentioned for Harbinger. So we'll go into the map. We'll look at how the Obelisk Scarab works exactly. We'll just do this once. I may cut this up because the maps are a bit long. They're like 3 to 4 minutes. If you're absolutely blasting. Now, they are quite difficult. We're increasing the effect of mods. We're adding a lot of Beyond mobs. And as I said, Harbinger does add a lot of monsters to the map. So do be careful if you're coming in on a weaker character. This is something you could maybe aim towards, as it did perform pretty well compared to some other strategies I've run so far. But that is based on a, hypothetical clear time. I did time some of the runs to determine how much you theoretically will be making, but let's be honest, it's never 100% accurate, as there is downtime and stuff like that, and time to sell, which so many of you like to frequently remind me, but it's very hard to incorporate that. So you'll have to just deal with my consistent methods, as inaccurate as they sometimes have to be. Now, we have these obelisks, you see them spawning, and when I kill them, they are going to drop shards. You see them dropping on the ground. We're getting a ton of ancient shards, annulment shards, exalt shards. Interestingly, the obelisks seem to drop stacks a bit lower than the kings or the regular harbies. The regular harbies or kings seem to drop 3 to 4 fracturing shards. When they drop an instance of fracturing shards, they can drop 2. I have had that happen once, but more often than not, they drop 3 or 4, and they are then duplicated by the Warhorde Scarab, which just duplicates all the loot you get from Harbinger. The thing that I wanted to measure, because obviously fracturing shards were going to be pretty scarce in such a small amount of maps, only 50 of each strategy respectively, I wanted to track the number of ancient orbs and annulment orbs to see if there was a marketable difference between, the two strategies in terms of the number of shards you make. That would give us a better idea, right? And it turned out there actually wasn't. We'll see that when we go into the loot later on, but there wasn't a massive difference in the number of shards that you drop overall. It's just that with the King Harbies dropping higher stack sizes of fracturing shards, we did do a lot better on them in the second test. We dropped 7 instances of fracturing shards in test number 2, which was without the Obelisk Scarab, and in test number 1, we dropped 6 instances of fracturing shards. So less instances of the drops and a lower average drop amount meant that we got much less fracturing shards whilst using the obelisks. Another important thing to mention, having no obelisks meant that we have 3 additional harbingers, which takes our total from 11 all the way up to 14, which equals, you know, a lot more, or 33, well, what would it be? 27% more harbingers, which also means a lot more beyond mobs, a lot more rare monsters, a lot more scarabs, a lot more opportunities for divines, as this strategy is a good way to drop just raw currency as well. Compared to other strategies that I've run this league, I dropped many more Valdos boxes and divine orbs. You also drop a ton of scarabs from other rares, dropped a lot more scarabs when there were 14 harbies in my map, compared to when there was only 11, as you would expect. Damn, I managed to waffle almost all the way through this map. That's pretty impressive. Like the video if you think that was an impressive amount of waffling, whilst simultaneously being somewhat useful to somebody listening. I think that's a pretty good job by me. Good job, Milky. All right, let's see if we can get any fracturing shards just to make a cool video moment for the vid. If not, we'll head on into the spreadsheet. That's it, we're done. Pick up these remaining scours and let's get out of here. So let's talk about the scarabs, just showcase the difference between the 2 variations. We used on the first strategy, I used 2 of the Harbinger Scarabs, 1 Obelisk, 1 Regency, and 1 Warhordes. The Regency and the Warhordes are kind of irreplaceable. And then we swapped Obelisk for Harbinger in the second test. So that's how we set it up. And we'll talk about the more map in a moment. Let's go into the spreadsheet itself. Where is it hiding? Here it is. So we have test with the Obelisk. The investment per map was 43.6 chaos. The total wealthy exile tab value afterwards was 38.8. This is removing anything that's erroneous or, you know, extra, or some lucky drops that I didn't deem within the range of, you know, normal, at least to the extent that I can know. So 38.8 divines returned after an investment of about 14, yielded, if you were to map at the, you know, the high pace, you would be able to get 8.5 divines per hour. This is kind of the top end if you are able to map that fast. Now, interestingly, we got 144 annuls, 134 ancients, 28 fracturing shards, and 14.5 exalts whilst using obelisks. And it took us 3.5 minutes from out. Naturally, you're going to go faster when doing the obelisk strategy because you have less harbingers to kill. They're the thing that add the bulk of the time to the map. And the loot distribution itself, you can see 45% of the loot came from harbies, which meant that the rest of the loot was pretty much exclusively ground loot. So buffing the map itself and using an 8 mod to get as much loot out of the Beyond and Harbingers is definitely beneficial here, because 55% of our total loot, assuming this is within the range of average, is going to benefit from that increased effect. So definitely worth running 8 mods if you to run this, despite it not scaling the Harbinger loot itself, and you have a build good enough to do so. So let's now go into the no obelisk test, where we only dropped 138 annuls, 132 ancients, but 46 fracturing shards. Now, we of course got less ancients and annuls, so this would lead me to believe that without obelisk you drop less instances of shards. Of course, this is subject to change. I would assume it's reasonably speaking within the same amount. This is so close that we could say it's probably about the same instances of shards dropping. What they are, of course, is determined by your RNG. And then fracturing shards, we got 46, which only 7 instances compared to the 6, but we dropped 18 more. And that's because when you drop fracturing shards with more harbingers and more kings, as I mentioned, you're going to drop a higher number of them. You're going to get 8 or 6 or 4 minimum. Whereas with the obelisk, you're going to get 2, 2, 4, 8, 6, you know, a lot less. And the exalts, again, pretty close. I think these may have been dropped, not from Harby, and I forgot to take them out. I think these were almost identical. I think this should be 14.4 if I remember correctly. So you can see here the Harby loot, despite getting a ton more fracturing shards. This is the interesting point. Despite getting a ton more fracturing shards and getting so much more currency from Harby, it was less of a percentage of our total loot. Very interesting. That's because adding more Harbies to the map, adding more monsters to the map, adding more rares to the map meant that we got more scarabs, more currency, more maps. And obviously there's miscellaneous stuff at the bottom, which is kind of, you can take it off if you like. But this yielded a much higher div per hour if you care about that. And it yielded a much higher return per map. And it didn't take that much longer. And you may think it should take 27% longer because that's how many more harbingers we've got in the map. But remember that they're spawning on top of each other. So it's not 100% the case, right? Because you're going to be killing multiple at the same time. It didn't actually add as much time as you would have thought. So 4 minutes per map compared to 3.5 minutes per map meant that yeah, Harbies without the Obelisk pulled a massive lead. Now, I would be interested in other people's results from this. If you're someone that's tested this a lot and you have data that is wildly different to mine, I'm all ears. This is not the be all and end all. But as for right now, my recommendation, if you are farming Harbinger, is to do 8 mod city squares without the Obelisk Scarab and the tree that I used. That would be my 100% recommendation. You're going to get a ton of Harby loot, you're going to get a ton of Scarabs, a ton of currency, a ton of maps, and you're going to get some good returns. And it's not all that difficult to sell all this. Scarabs you can sell in bulk, currency is currency, and then all this is, it's only 4 things you have to sell, right? So yeah, there we go. I think that was pretty concise. Let me know if you try this out, you have a good time. If you want to see the results, go into the spreadsheet in the description. If I missed anything, let me know. I try and keep everything organized, but I do fail sometimes. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.